Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome again the President of the American Geographical Society, Dr. Marie Price.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Hanke, Mr. McClendon, Dr. Liverman, and Mrs. Melamid. Distinguished participants of the American Geographical Society, AGS counselors, fellows, faculty, friends of Columbia University, and honored guests. We are pleased that you're joining us this afternoon for the presentation of 2 American Geographical Society medals. The O.M. Miller Medal for outstanding work in the field of cartography and geodesy to Mr. John Hanke and Mr. Brian McClendon, and the Alexander and Ilse Melamid Medal for distinguished work on the dynamic relationship between human culture and natural resources to Dr. Diana Liverman. Our society awarded its first medal in 1896. Since then, 9 medals have been created, and nearly 200 people have received this honor. Harkening back to another era, the medals were created to recognize excellence and were awarded to individuals who expanded geographic knowledge through research and exploration, pioneered new geographic technology, and used geographical thinking to influence policy. I liken this to the Oscars of geography. Many medalists have come from the United States, but more than half were born in other countries, from Brazil, from China, the United Kingdom, France, Mongolia, Germany, and even Canada. Through the awarding of medals, AGS has recognized astronauts, explorers, cartographers, inventors, researchers, and world leaders. The first medal was named for a cartographer, O.M. Miller, who served the society for nearly 50 years. And he established this medal to recognize truly influential cartography. Past recipients include Arthur Robinson, you maybe have heard of the Robinson projection, Mark Monmaner, an AGS counselor and the celebrated author of How to Lie with Maps, and even Waldo Tobler, you know, the first law of geography, Tobler, that everything is related to everything else, but near things are more related than distant things. All my AP human geographers know that. We've also recognized a Chinese cartographic leader, Chen Shupeng, and a Mongolian cosmonaut and director of informatics and remote sensing, Maidaryavan Gonzarig. This medal was created in 1968, yet it has only been awarded 6 times. So I would now like to invite Dr. Deborah Popper, a recipient of the AGS Paul V. Boris Medal, the chairman of the AGS Honors Committee, and Chairman Dr. Tucker to join me now at the podium. And Dr. Popper, would you please read the citation?
Let's see if we can fix this. Good afternoon. It is my distinct honor as chair of the American Geographical Society's Honors and Awards Committee to read the citation for the O.M. Miller Medals. Now, John Hanke, to whom I'm going to read first, is known as a visionary, a person of enormous breadth of thinking that is disciplined by intense focus. In Hanke's case, that vision finds its outlet in taking the technical fields of geomapping and visualization, finding new possibilities within them, and then attracting a huge range of users who get to experience geography as fun, useful, shareable, and open to their control. He was CEO and co-founder of the digital mapping software company Keyhole, whose products became the underpinnings of Google Earth, Google Maps, and Google Street View. These collections of software cartographic bases, databases, and spherical images have become the conduit through which people now see and understand geography. Hanke came to geography from a childhood spent in a small West Texas town. A neighboring kindergarten teacher opened up his world, supplying him with piles of National Geographics. And he spent hours paging through the magazines, discovering ancient Egypt, the Incan civilization, Solomon Islands. And he especially loved the folded up maps and pored through them over and over and over again, letting his imagination wander. The normal wanderlust many experience growing up in fairly isolated settings built and influenced his lifelong path and purpose to create new ways for other people to let their imaginations roam the world. Hanke arrived at Keyhole and geomapping directly from the gaming world, where he helped found 2 successful startups, Archetype Interactive and The Big Network. He played a role in developing Meridian 59, one of the first commercial, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. He melded gaming's place, scene, and user orientation with mapping. And Google acquired Keyhole in 2004, and Hanke became vice president of its Geo group. He was instrumental in creating Google's innovative products that fostered an explosion of information capabilities to cover the globe. These new products scaled up and now seem ubiquitous. With them, nearly anyone, a world leader, scholar, or curious child, can conveniently connect with geographic information. With a computer or smartphone at hand, we have the power to travel the globe, zooming in and out at will. We can ask questions about places and get answers that tell us how our own or others' places relate to neighbors, regions, continents, the whole globe. Currently, Hanke's CEO of Niantic Labs, whose products continue to transform ordinary worlds. One of its first apps, Field Trip, intended to get young people out observing and learning about their environment. The company's greatest success thus far has been Pokemon Go, which got millions of people, especially those usually glued to their digital media, moving. It effectively reconnected them to place, made them explore their own communities and others, building vital maps in their heads of all the places they'd been in their search for a hit, finding a figure drawn from the world of Japanese anime. Pokemon Go is widely credited as the most successful augmented reality experience to date. By the start of this year, people had caught 88 billion Pokemon. And they had walked 9 billion kilometers farther than to Pluto. Thousands of excess pounds were lost, marriages and friendships created, and more importantly, people looked up from their phones long enough to interact with the physical world and blend the digital and the physical. Hanke has pioneered how we experience geography. On one side of the O.M. Miller Cartographic Prize, there's an image of a globe with the word ubique, Latin for everywhere. John Hanke has given us a new view of our Earth. Therefore, for these reasons and more, on behalf of its grateful members, worldwide scholars, and all who recognize the importance of excellence in geographical research and exploration, the American Geographical Society honors Mr. John Hanke by presenting him with the O.M. Miller Medal for Outstanding Work in the field of cartography and geodesy on this 17th day of November in the year 2017 in New York City. Congratulations, John.
Thank you. It's all about the photo.
And now, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would. Well, it's a great honor to be recognized by the Society, so thank you very much for that. You know, it's important to recognize that nothing like the things that we're being recognized here today get done by an individual or even a couple of individuals. So whenever I moved off of Geo, there were literally thousands of people in Google working on Google Earth and Google Maps. So I want to acknowledge them, especially the co-founders of Keyhole, though, who aren't here today. Of course, Brian is here, but Michael Jones is not. Phil Kesslin, Shikai Ozama, Mark Aben, and Avi Barzev were all founders and critical to the creation of that product. Chris Tanner and Remy Arnaud were also early founders and incredibly helpful. Google should be thanked. We would never have been able to take that seed of an idea to this scale that we were without the generous support and vision of Larry and Sergey and Eric, Jonathan Rosenberg, Marissa Meyer, and Bill Korn, and I want to acknowledge them. I want to acknowledge my wife, who put up with me spending many, many hours working on Google Earth and not at home, helping with our kids, and for our children who make all of the things that we do relevant and meaningful for me. And I especially want to thank the late Miss Betty Browning, who was the kindergarten teacher that I had, who a few years after I was out of kindergarten brought by those grocery bags full of National Geographic magazine. I want to say it's an honor to be recognized by you all here. You're the professionals. I feel like I'm an amateur in this space. I believe that geography and cartography are essential to see and understand the whole of the world that we live in. Maps give us that view and, importantly, the perspective to see the world in as an interconnected system, a system on which our lives depend. And you all are doing incredibly important work to make our existence on this planet sustainable, making cities more livable and walkable, making public transportation, and in fact all forms of transportation, work better, and tackling global problems such as deforestation, and in fact all of the things that contribute to global warming. These are powerful problems, to be sure, but I believe that if we use the tools and technologies available to us and our own minds and will, we can certainly overcome them. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. And I think that's okay. And so I ask that Brian come and switch places, I guess is what you're supposed to do. Okay. Okay, so let us now acknowledge Brian McClendon. Meeting the challenges of the 21st century requires new tools, and Brian McClendon has given us considerable ones in Google Earth, Google Maps, and Google Street View. These programs, collections of software cartographic bases, databases, and spherical images, have become that channel through which we now see and understand geography. Worldwide, people turn now and understand geography, and use those tools McClendon created to see, to comprehend, to navigate, and control the world, to interact with spatial information and other users. McClendon's geospatial data visualization innovations have made it possible for those world leaders and scholars and curious children to grasp geographic knowledge previously accessible only to the finest and rarest of geographers. So today we are honored to present him with the O.M. Miller Cartographic Medal. McClendon grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, and got a Bachelor of Science in Engineering from the University of Kansas. In 2001, he co-founded Keyhole and served as its vice president for engineering. He headed the team responsible for the development of Keyhole markup language, KML, the guts of the program that piqued Google's interest. And Google acquired Keyhole in 2004 and brought McClendon in as vice president of engineering to implement and expand Keyhole's capabilities into Google Earth, Google Maps, and Street View. And these programs have changed the way we envision and track the Earth, giving us mind-bending data collection possibilities and allowing 3D views easily ready for manipulation in multiple ways at multiple scales. The world of computerized mapping might have been tightly controlled by the designated few, But instead, these new programs have given new voices the power to say what geospatial information is important to know, represent, share, and promote. Google Earth has been used to model ancient Rome, monitor mountaintop removal in Appalachia, and track the spread and control of schistosomiasis, or the quality of public space. In 2013, McClendon was named a UN Champion of the Earth, its most significant environmental award for, and I quote, harnessing the power of technology to support conservation and green economic development. The prize noted his role in helping indigenous tribes monitor illegal logging, track their forests in ways that supported their trade in carbon credits, and use real-time surveillance to control poaching and increase security for endangered species. In 2015, he was inducted into the National Academy of Engineering, and he held at least 12 patents. In 2015, McClendon left Google for Uber, hired expressly to solve the navigation and routing problems inherent in Uber's business model. The internet-based ride-for-hire company engages drivers from the general public who use their own cars, but who may not hold in their heads the complete map they need to take passengers where they want to go. Under McClendon, Uber Maps improved, raising efficiency, eliminating frustration, and thus improving driver and passenger satisfaction. Lawrence, Kansas has always been central to McClendon, and if you look carefully, you can see it is also central to Google Earth. The front lawn of the apartment building where McClendon grew up is the program's center of the Earth, where the cursor, if left to itself, wants to go. In 2017, McClendon returned home and to the University of Kansas, from which he had received an honorary degree in 2016. He's now a research professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science and a member of various university advisory boards. He is also affiliated with Firebrand Ventures, an angel capital investment company seeking out new innovations. We recognize McClendon's role in bringing us applications that astound us. The American Geographical Society claims Brian McClendon is one of its own. His expansion of the quintessentially geographic expression of information has changed the world. Therefore, for these reasons and more, on behalf of its grateful members, worldwide scholars, and all who recognize the importance of excellence in geographical research and exploration, the American Geographical Society honors Mr. Brian McClendon by presenting him with the O.M. Miller Medal for outstanding work in the field of cartography and geodesy on this 17th day of November in the year 2017 in New York City. Congratulations, Brian. And now, will you say a few words, please?
Absolutely. So I would like to thank the American Geographical Society for giving me this award, and I really appreciate all the work that you do to both help with geographic awareness, but bring together experts from fields, all over, especially in the last 2 days. I've been very impressed with the topics discussed. I, too, have some people to thank. I first would like to thank my wife, Beth Ellen, who's actually sitting here. She was the designer of some of the early user interfaces for Google Earth, so she contributed directly to the project. But more importantly, she also put up with me and gave me somebody to talk to about the hard problems that I've had, in the last 10 years, the last 15 years, about the challenges in the space. I would also like to thank John, who, he and I have been working together a long time, and I don't think this could have happened without him. He was running this company, through the hard times, and I think that the ability to get it through 2001, 2002 was an achievement that many startups did not make, and I think John was really responsible for that. He thanked a lot of the other co-founders. I just want to add 2 people to that. One is a friend of mine named John Rolfe, who we hired early in the Keyhole days, and he is, I would say, personally responsible for probably about half of the code in Google Earth and maintained it, built it, and made it fast, made it more powerful over the years, and he's a sort of an unsung hero, and I think he's happy with that, so hopefully you won't hear me talking about him right now. And the other is another friend of mine who I went to school with and also worked with in several capacities, but I hired him in 2006 when Google Earth was just released to start work on porting it to the Macintosh. And his name's Dan Webb, and he came in, ported it to the Mac, and he did to me what I had done to Google Earth before, was he changed the center of the Macintosh version of Google Earth to be Chanute, Kansas. So if you zoom in from outer space down on a Mac and just hit the zoom button, you'll end up at this intersection. And the people of Chanute were so proud of this that they actually put a mural on the intersection that is a picture of Google Earth itself. And this is very meta. So in any case, the last thing I would leave you with is that making maps is a never-ending problem. Natural geography changes slowly, but it does change. But human geography changes all the time. And one of the things that we've discovered in making the maps for Google is that people change, businesses change, roads change, addresses change. These are all big problems. And the more we can improve the speed in which we create and correct maps, the better they'll be. There's no such thing as a perfect map, but we'll keep trying. Thank you.
And now I ask that Diana Liverman join us, and she's already beat me to it. We would like to honor Diana Liverman, who I've always considered one of the rock stars of geography. The Alexander and Ilse Melamid Medal is our newest medal. It was established in 2002. Mr. Melamid served the council of the AGS for 26 years. He was also the recipient of the Samuel Finley Breeze Morse Medal in 1991. The Melamids, in creating this medal, sought to recognize work on the dynamic relationship between human culture and natural resources. This was inspired by their many years of work and travel around the world, but especially in the Middle East. Past recipients include Dr. Carl Zimmerer at Penn State University and Dr. Mike Pasqualetti at Arizona State University. And now I ask Dr. Popper to read the citation.
Again, it is my distinct honor as chair of the American Geographical Society's Honors and Awards Committee to read the citation for the Alexander and Ilse Melamid Medal. Now, the Melamid Medal rewards outstanding work on the dynamic relationship between the natural world and humans, and this is precisely what Diana Liverman has done. She has centered her efforts on humanity's most critical global challenge, to understand the dynamic of climate change and its impacts on everyone, everywhere, especially the most vulnerable of us. She's participated in and led some of the most significant efforts to document the changes already underway. As a geographer among broad interdisciplinary climate groups, she has always insisted on checking global models for scalar effects and gaps, which those outside the field often overlook. In directing her doctoral students to explore local resilience strategies, she fosters research that offers concrete steps for constructive action and hope. She combines the skills of the scientist and the humanist, which deepens the power of her work. Her life and career have spanned continents. She was born in Accra, Ghana, educated in England, in Canada, and the US, getting her doctorate in geography from the University of California at Los Angeles. Her geographic interests were stimulated by her experiences in vastly different places. Her father's involvement with the construction of the Volta Dam gave her early experience and exposure in the economic, environmental, and social effects of large-scale projects. Family vacations took her to English national parks with their strikingly glaciated landscapes. While studying natural hazards at university, she drew on her past exposure to vulnerable communities to comprehend the impact on them of, say, drought or flooding. As she became more deeply involved with climate change research, she also became more deeply committed to increasing our ability to alleviate suffering and create sustainable livelihoods. Dr. Liverman is Regents Professor of Geography and Development at the University of Arizona and participates in its Center for Latin American Studies and its Arid Lands program. She's also a visiting professor and senior research fellow at Oxford University. She previously taught at Pennsylvania State University, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and also at Oxford. She has supervised over 75 students and postdocs who've gone on to do impressive work that she says inspires her to further heights. She has written or co-edited 7 books and over 100 articles for publications ranging from Annals of the AAG, Ecology and Society, Economic Geography, Environment and Planning A, Food Policy, Nature, Science. She's cited nearly 14,000 times in Google Scholar. Her research has taken up the human dimensions of global environmental change, and her main research interests include climate impacts, vulnerability and adaptation, and mitigation policies, especially in the developing world. She also works on the political economy and political ecology of environmental management in the Americas, particularly in Mexico. A list of her current projects shows her breadth and energy. Work on climate justice, including the role of women in climate science, climate and poverty in Tucson, and climate and the new Sustainable Development Goals, a study of the environmental impacts of NAFTA Plus 20, societal responses to megadrought, and the human dimensions of climate services and climate information provision. She has worked tirelessly to shape environmental and climate policy. She's been an active member of national and international advisory committees on global change, including the U.S. National Academy of Sciences Committee on the International Human Dimensions of Global Environmental Change, and the Inter-America Institute for Global Change Research. Under her leadership and editorship, the Committee on the Human Dimensions of Global Change in 1998 issued People and Pixels, Linking Remote Sensing and Social Science, which laid out remote sensing's technical capabilities and limitations for understanding the links between the natural world and humans. She was a member of the National Academy of Sciences Committee on America's Climate Choices and chair of the subpanel on informing decisions. She chaired the Scientific Advisory Committee, Global Environmental Change and Food Systems Program. Her editorial board roles include the annual review of environment and resources, climatic change, environment, science and policy, and global environmental change. She has worked closely with several arts and cultural groups on climate change issues as well. So for her commitment to rigorous scholarship and sound policy in addressing the most serious societal environmental issue of the 21st century, we applaud Diana Liverman. Therefore, for these reasons and more, on behalf of its grateful members, worldwide scholars, and all who recognize the importance of excellence in geographical research and exploration, the American Geographical Society honors Diana Liverman by presenting her with the Alexander and Ilse Melamid Medal for distinguished work on the dynamic relationship between human, cultural, and natural resources on this 17th day of November in the year 2017 in New York City. Congratulations, Diana. And now, will you say a few words, please?
Thank you very much to the American Geographical Society. But I want to start by acknowledging Mrs. Melamid, who is here, and it's such an honor to receive a medal that she designed and that honors she and her husband. So thank you very much for being here. It really means a lot. The first thing I did when I heard that I was awarded this medal was look back on some of the previous awardees of different medals for the American Geographical Society, and I found so many people there who were friends and inspirations, and I just want to mention some of them because they had an enormous impact on my career. Just starting with some people who were just friends and supporters. Wilbur Zielinski, when I was at Penn State, was one of my most fun colleagues. Berta Becker from Brazil served on a committee with me for a number of years. Amazing woman, Brazilian geographer who we lost just a couple of years ago. The person I was most delighted to find was Ken Hare from the University of Toronto, a very famous and wonderful Canadian climatologist, and I was his teaching assistant and research assistant my first year of graduate school, and his kindness and inspiration. He was talking about climate change before anybody else was, and he took me to the World Climate Conference and to the Desertification Conference of the UN, had a big impact. Then people in geography who I was fortunate to know, but also inspired by, Bob Cates, Gilbert White, and even Carl Sauer, who one of my best friends is his granddaughter, and I've been very influenced by Sauer's work. And then Rachel Carson, who is one of my heroines, and to prove that, one of my dogs was named after Rachel Carson, and that shows how much she meant to me. And I actually also have established a scholarship program at my university. I've got lots of people to thank. I actually want to just thank the discipline of geography. It's really amazing to find a career where you're never bored, where you get to travel all over the world. And as a teacher of geography, I get to open up the world to so many young people. And, you know, you get tired, but for me, going into the lecture room to talk to students about geography is so important. And one of the things that has really affected me the last few years is I work on environmental issues, I work on climate change, and you really have to be careful not to make people depressed, not to make the students paralyzed. So I'm always looking for good news for my students, and one of the things today was hearing these optimistic presentations about the future that I can take back. In terms of people I want to specifically thank, it would be Ken Hare and then Anne White, who is a Canadian geographer. I want to thank Steve Schneider, who was a climate scientist at Stanford and the National Center for Atmospheric Research, who completely changed my life. And I want to acknowledge Bob Chen, who's here because we were both students with Steve, and he can tell you what an amazing person Steve was, and again, I'm sad he's not still with us. And I want to acknowledge my friends who, throughout my career, have supported me, particularly a group of women geographers. Amy Glassmeyer from MIT is here with me, Margaret Fitzsimmons from Santa Cruz, and Sally Marston from the University of Arizona are the people who I called when things got tough and who read my papers and who kept me going. My parents, no longer with us. My dad would be so proud of me. He really cared about the world. And I was thinking in the Google Earth discussion, when I was a child, he would always buy me these beautiful Ordnance Survey maps of the British Ordnance Survey before we would go on vacation. And I would study them in great detail. And I would even draw profiles of the mountains that we were going to see. Well, last summer, I took my niece and nephew on the Great American Road Trip around the American West, and we did the same thing, except they used Google Earth to get excited about where we were going to go. I think the other thing I want to talk about is what it's meant to me to be a woman in geography. When I first studied geography, there were literally a handful of women at the full professor level in American geography. And I've been privileged to see the role and the opportunities for women to expand in American geography enormously. I have trained many, many women to go on into geography, and they're having wonderful careers and having an impact on the world. And I'm also in a department at the University of Arizona with 30 faculty, and the majority of them are women. So the world has changed a lot, and I'm very grateful to have been part of that. And looking to 2050, I hope that expands and sustains and continues. And I think the last thing, given that this is a 2050 symposium looking at the future of mobility, is I thought about what matters to me most looking to 2050. Well, I'm a climate change researcher. I write about climate change all the time. But the other week, I had to admit to my students the level of my lifetime carbon footprint with almost 3 million miles on American Airlines. And so what I want for 2050 is carbon neutral flight so that climate researchers don't have to feel quite so guilty about flying around the world. And I am concerned about 2050. This week, the countries of the world are meeting in Bonn for the climate negotiations, COP23. I'm a little sad that the US is not playing a stronger role, and I hope by 2050 we've stabilized the climate, stopped the loss of biodiversity, and eliminated poverty and hunger. I know that's a big wish list, but I actually think we can do it, and that geographers have a lot to offer. So thank you very much for the award, and again, just thank you.